So, have you ever been in that relationship where you feel like you're just doing all the work, giving all the emotional energy? It's this really common and honestly super painful pattern where one person seems to be loving so much harder while the other just feels distant. Well, today we're going to get right into the psychology behind this whole dynamic. And you know what? It often starts with just one single powerful sentence.
Yep, this one right here. I'm not like you. It's such a gut punch, isn't it? One person says it, and for the other, it's like a giant wall just shot up between them. This phrase, this is really at the heart of the emotional imbalance we're going to unpack.
All right, let's kick things off with our first section, the unequal love pattern. This is all about that emotional imbalance that, let's be real, so many of us recognize.
So, what does this pattern actually look like? Well, it often boils down to this really stark contrast in how people act. On one side, you've got the person who's constantly checking in, wearing their heart on their sleeve, loving honestly. And then, on the other side, you get those late replies, the avoidance of any deep emotional talks. And it's that gap right there. That's what creates that feeling of being totally alone, even when you're in a relationship. Now, to be really clear here, this doesn't automatically mean the other person feels nothing. That's not the point. The real issue is the imbalance in emotional effort and just availability. You've got one person pouring their entire heart out, and the others keeping theirs under lock and key. That gap, that's where all the pain and insecurity starts to grow. So this really brings us to the million-dollar question, right? Why does this happen? Why does one person seem to love so much more while the other is so emotionally distant? Is it really as simple as one person being too much and the other not enough? Or is there something way deeper, something psychological going on just beneath the surface?
Okay, let's dive into that. Section 2, two sides of love. Because the answer here isn't about pointing fingers or placing blame, it's about really understanding the psychology of both people involved. First up, let's talk about the over-giver. You probably know this person. Maybe you are this person. They're the partner who expresses their feelings openly, they value that deep connection. But what's really going on inside? What's the psychology behind that intense need to give and to love so deeply?
Well, it's pretty complex, actually. There are a few things at play here. It could come from something called an anxious attachment style, which is basically a deep-seated fear of being abandoned. Or maybe it goes back to childhood, where love felt like something you had to earn through sacrifice. These folks often have incredibly high empathy, but they're also driven by this powerful fear of the relationship ending, which makes them feel like they have to constantly prove their love.
So let's put a pin in that term for a second. Anxious attachment. What is it? Think of it like a relationship alarm system that's always on high alert. It's all about this deep, underlying fear of losing the person you're with. And because of that fear, you have this constant need for reassurance and closeness, just to feel okay, to feel secure. When you don't get it, that's when the anxiety really kicks in.
Okay, so now let's flip the script and look at the other partner, the one who seems so emotionally guarded, so distant. It is so easy to just label them as cold or uncaring, right? But more often than not, their behavior is really a form of self-protection, not a sign that they don't have feelings.
Yeah, that emotional distance is like a shield, and it can be rooted in a few things. It might be what's called an avoidant attachment style, or maybe a deep fear of becoming dependent on someone else's emotions, of being, suffocated. It could even be trauma from a past relationship. And for a lot of people, it's simple. They just grew up in a family where emotions were never talked about, so they literally never learned how to express them.
And this brings us to the other side of that attachment coin, avoidant attachment. If anxious attachment is about fearing distance, avoidant attachment is about being really uncomfortable with closeness. These individuals value their independence so much that they instinctively pull away when someone gets too close, because to them, that intimacy can feel like a threat, like they're being engulfed. So we've got these two different psychological profiles, the anxious and the avoidance, often drawn to each other. But why does this particular dynamic feel so incredibly common right now? Well, it turns out our modern world might actually be pouring gasoline on this fire.
Just take a look at some of these modern factors. You've got social media culture, which gives us this illusion of infinite options, right? It kind of cheapens emotional investment. Then there's this widespread fear of commitment, a lot of emotional burnout from past heartbreaks, and this hyper-individualistic mindset that tells us to prioritize me over we. our culture is great at teaching us how to be successful, but not so great at teaching us emotional skills.
Okay, so we get the psychology behind it all. But the big question is, how do we fix it? Is it even possible? The good news is yes. There is absolutely a path you can take to move from all that frustration to real connection and balance.
And here are 5 really concrete steps to get there. First, you have to change how you talk to each other. No more blaming. Second, it's about actually understanding each other's attachment styles. Third, setting healthy emotional boundaries is key. Fourth, you've got to create a space where both people feel emotionally safe. And finally, and this one is crucial, the overgiver has to stop chasing validation that really ought to be given freely. And this right here is a perfect example of that huge shift in communication. Instead of saying, "you don't care," which is just an accusation, right? It's going to make anyone shut down. Try saying, "I feel emotionally disconnected." See the difference? One is a judgment, the other is an expression of your feeling. It's an invitation for them to understand you, not a wall they have to defend against. So, when you boil it all down, here's the key takeaway. A relationship that lasts isn't built on one person's sheer intensity. It's not about how hard one person loves. It's built on mutual emotional responsiveness. It's built on balance. One person's passion, no matter how strong, just can't sustain the relationship if it's not being met with some emotional availability from the other side. Because ultimately, healthy love isn't about one person being the strong one and the other being the needy one. Not at all. It's about creating an environment of emotional safety, a space where both people feel secure enough to be vulnerable, to connect, and to care for each other openly. That's the goal. And that really leaves us with one final question for you to think about. Is your relationship built on balance, or is it built on silence? When things get tough, can you both actually talk about it and find that balance? Or is one person's cry for connection just met with silence? The answer to that question, well, it says just about everything.